Welcome to the Soulfull Sound podcast, where you will find conscious, inspiring content to support your healing and transformation. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation for you to be part of our community, where more insightful conversations await to guide you to heal, grow, and thrive. Simply click the subscribe button. It means the world to me. Your support, your comments, everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. I'm so excited to be on this adventure with you, and your subscription is a valuable part of making it all happen. Thank you so much for joining, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are. Welcome back, everyone, to another amazing, beautiful podcast episode where I am joined by the beautiful Abigail Iquo Isuo, who is an integrative transpersonal psychotherapist who is fascinated by human potential and therefore intrigued by healing, truth, transformation, and evolution. Yummy, 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 yummy. Welcome, Abigail.
Thank you. So beautiful just to hear that introduction. I'm like looking around. Is that me? It's me.
You know, it's funny. I get that all the time from my guests. It's like, but I really love the work and I want to honor that and celebrate it when I meet people like you. And I've been fortunate because you and I met in person. We collaborated on an event only a few months ago. And it was such a beautiful witnessing of your work. I just thought we have to have a conversation about this out of that context and take it further. And really, I get to share your awesomeness with the community. I am so excited about this.
Oh, beautiful. And likewise, it was just so easy and smooth to dance with you.
Yeah.
So real huge appreciations.
Yes, beautiful. Well, I like to kind of start my podcast off really with your story. The work you're doing. How did you get into all of this? You can tell me as little or as much of your story as you want, just to get an idea of what led you to where you are today.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, let me see how to just kind of pull that all together.
Yes.
Well, I guess I have to kind of start with the roots,
Mhm.
which is I am multicultural, let's say. My mother is British English, blonde with blue eyes. She looks like me. My father is Nigerian, a chieftain in the south of Nigeria. And I grew up in the north of England, in Newcastle.
Oh, wow.
And I think growing up, I often say this, I was 6 foot when I was 10, and I had a different color skin. Back in the 70s, it was very different. Not
Mm.
that I can say I kind of received any prejudice because of that, but I knew I was different. And I think many people feel their own difference.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a special thing, but my difference was what I understood. And
Yes.
I was really fascinated to see, hey, what is this that humans have that make them different, that actually could be something that would make them have their own truth?
Do you feel called to use your voice and sound in a healing capacity? Learn how to use your voice therapeutically to facilitate healing and well-being. Whether you want to go deeper in your own healing journey or facilitate others in theirs, this training is for you. This online training runs over 5 weekends and offers theory, practice, resources, and support on your path to becoming a qualified sound healer and for your personal healing journey.
Truth. You know, that they all have their own, I had my own truth, and it didn't quite fit in to what I was seeing around me that was classed as normal.
Mm.
And so I think from the beginning, I was intrigued with potential, truth, transformation, just kind of exploring what is possible.
Mhm.
Where do I fit? Where do I not fit? How can I actually break some rules because these rules are not quite fitting?
Yes.
And so I guess there's a rebellious defiance in that,
Mhm.
which kind of brought and opened new avenues and new paths. And I experienced some wonderful things. I modeled when I was very young because I was tall, not in myself because I thought I was beautiful, but wow, models are tall. Hey, that's me. And I was spotted and they asked me, I said, why not? And then that opened one avenue. And then as I grew and I went through my college, my university, I kind of then realized that, hey, England is quite white, Nigeria is quite black, if that's what you say. And I'm really intrigued with, hey, where are my people? Where's my
Mm.
tribe?
Mm.
And I had this like kind of yearning, a desire, a longing just to find like-minded souls, beings that looked, felt, acted like me. And
Mhm.
you know, I still yet to find because we're all so individual, right?
Yeah.
But modeling allowed me to travel a little bit.
Mhm.
And I also got to play netball. I played netball for England. I traveled a little bit with that.
Amazing.
And then I ended up in Greece. And Greece was like, wow, these people have a similar tone to me. They speak a different language, they have a completely different culture, but there's something beautiful here. Feisty, amazing, kind of philosophical, really tasty. The flavors were quite fiery. You know, the Greeks, in my experience, are quite kind of direct and energetic and passionate. And I was like, oh, I love this. And so I was there from about 17 and I got to model and play and learn and grow. And I got to see the different dark side and light side of life. And
Mhm.
I mean that not in color or kind of culture, but more in relation to the shadow aspects of
Mhm.
humanity. Model
Yes.
looks glamorous on the outside, under the underbelly is a little bit
Mhm. Mhm.
more dark, shall we say. Not
Mhm.
all the time, but there is that part. And
Mhm.
then I got to see, oh, that actually that is in all of the aspects of human expression. Intriguing. So then I did a psychology degree, and then I kind of thought, wow, this psychology degree is fantastic. It was a 4-year American university, but it was also really structured
Mhm.
and really conditioned and like absolute, like this way, and you fit in this box, and this means that you have this disorder or you have this abnormality. And I was like, can't be. You cannot fit this complexity and this incredible massivity of the human expression into boxes. So
Mhm.
I did, I think, what young teachers, which is read all the books and then forget them all.
Yes.
And then just meet the person. So
Yeah.
I did a little bit of that. But in Greece, I also had these beautiful experiences of teaching young kids English, modeling with beautiful women who also had sad stories. I got to play a little bit in the nightlife, and all of this mixture was like dance and music and
Mhm.
psychology and intricacies and complexities. And it's like, wow, this is a cauldron, you know, a
Mhm.
crucible of alchemical kind of magical possibilities. And
Beautiful.
so I finished my first degree and I just wanted to eat more. And I wanted to bring in more of maybe it's that the African rhythm, maybe
Mhm.
it's more of like kind of the body, the physiological aspects, not just the head,
Mhm.
but also beyond the personality and the conditioned kind of responses that we've all been seeped in.
Yes.
And I entered into the spiritual aspects, which I know that word in this day and age is kind of convoluted at times.
Yeah.
But it had that, I think, the possibility of the mystery, of
Mhm.
the miraculous, of like something deeper that you can't explain through theory, through ideology, through philosophy.
Mhm.
And so I was drawn to transpersonal psychotherapy, which allowed that crossover, allowed that dance
Mhm.
and the play with what is possible when you bring the body in, when you open up to transgenerational
Mm,
aspects.
mm,
And so I returned to London, and then I did a master's there at the same time, feeling a bit lost because it's still quite structured. And then there's another story, but then I met Osho
mm,
actually through a window of a bookshop, through a beautiful guy who was there and introduced me to different meditations.
mm,
And then I got the opportunity at that point to really see, oh, wow, the spiritual can dance with the psychology. The
yes.
psychology does have a depth. The darkness, the light, the beauty of what is possible in
Mm,
humanity has a place.
yeah.
And so from all of those little pieces, I mean, I'm making something quite, it was a life journey and it still is. But I'm summarizing it to say that that initial love of the truth and the journey into what is possible in our potential, which I don't even think we've scratched the surface of, was the thing that propelled me and influenced me all along the way. And I didn't have some set trajectory, but the doors opened and they opened. And then I kind of went in and did a master's in the psychotherapy. And then from then on, I picked up all kinds of breath work and constellation work, systemic work, and really existential work. Jung is really someone that I kind of enjoy in the
Mm,
complexity, but
yes.
also the magic of how it works and how it lives until today.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of my journey.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Very, very varied. I mean, of course, it would be the experiences of modeling and then sport at such a high level, which is awesome. It speaks about your level of performance and discipline, things that, may not necessarily be the things you talk about all the time. That's why I like these stories, because it really does speak to it. There is something that I want to pick out because there's so many beautiful nuggets to run with. But the first part for me was really strong, and I want to know your thoughts on this, how you navigate it, and perhaps also the other side, how you help people to navigate it. This human need to have a sense of belonging. So for, feeling like you belong somewhere or in a tribe or in your community or somewhere, can you speak a bit about that, from which side you want to start? But I'd love to know your own journey into that sense of belonging and then how you might help others, because that's a human need, isn't it, on some level?
it is. And I don't think there is a concrete, beautiful kind of tied up with a beautiful ribbon answer.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the journey began with knocking up against the box of structure and social order.
Hmm.
I'm a bit like a caterpillar, right? That's the image that just came in the cocoon, banging up and strengthening my wings to actually be able to
Hmm.
to turn into my own idea or individuation of a butterfly.
Hmm.
So for me, it definitely started off with recognizing that this social order, cultural context, and patterning of behaviors and being doesn't work for me. I don't understand some of the ridiculous rules.
Yeah.
And of course, I think that's true of many people. And so, because I don't understand them, let me just kind of like bang up against them. And I was lucky to be able to do that
Yeah.
without kind of putting myself in prison or kind of, destroying or hurting people.
Mm,
As I,
mm,
I wouldn't say I'm an activist of any sorts, but I do have a love for the truth.
yeah.
And so originally, I guess my journey started in this personality box. Like, what's my fixation? What am I identified with that makes me feel like I will eventually belong? And to belong to who or what?
Yeah.
And so my beginning is because I didn't feel like I belonged. And
Mm,
that striving became the propeller
yeah.
to really search. And I think what it then allowed me to visit was, what is my individual expression?
Mhm.
And that's where I got very hungry for the spiritual,
Mhm.
which for me doesn't have a box. It's not to do with the dogmatic, religious kind of scriptures, although I'm sure there's a lot of wisdom that is poured into spirituality that isn't corrupted
Mhm.
by man's ideas,
Yes.
women's ideas.
Mhm.
And so I think in terms of what I work with people is first to find your individuality. And that
Mhm.
means going into your roots. It means looking at being able to expose and confess certain things that are difficult, that are
Yes.
traumatic, overwhelming, that are blocks and issues and fixations and identifications for you that are not working.
Mhm.
And in being able to identify those, I think we then get to illuminate and elucidate that was in the closet.
Yeah.
And there's a big piece of me, and I think most of us who are in this line of work knows that when you expose something and when you can look at it and when you can see it and be witnessed by another,
Mhm.
then we come into a certain idea of belonging. There's
Yeah.
an acknowledgement that actually I can bring this to the surface. It's something I've hidden, something that maybe was shameful, something that society or those rules and social orders and patterns of behavior say you're not supposed to
Mhm.
think or feel or do this way. And
Yeah.
I can bring them. And this is my expression and I can be witnessed,
Mhm.
hopefully in a safe and non-judgmental way. That's the ideal part. That's the
Yeah.
work that I'm involved in.
Yes.
And in doing so, I gain an internal knowledge, an internal education for myself that within allows a transmutation.
Yeah.
Something dissolves, something
Mhm.
changes in my courage to stand in that, in my willingness to be seen in that, even if that's just by one individual who's a therapist
Mhm.
or a few individuals who are in a process with you. And in that, I feel transformation can happen. And
Yes.
transformation in that context for me brings a wholeness. And then the belonging is not because other people say, hey, you're just like me, you're invited, but
Mhm.
all that I can stand solid and say, I'm here and I belong just because life said so.
Yes. Yes, beautiful. That's so wonderful. It really reflects in such a beautiful way some of my own thoughts around it, which I often talk about authenticity in this way, but I hear the parallel of that dance between, I often talk about this as a revolving door between the inner universe and the outer world. And I know for me growing up, because I traveled around a bit as a child, my dad was a diplomat. I lived in Trinidad, I lived in Barbados, I lived in New York. I've been in the UK for a long time now. I've moved around. And in that movement as a child, there were moments where I felt very safe and comfortable at home, but outside of that home, I was like, well, where do I belong? Because this culture is different, then this culture is different, and then these people they're like me and they're not, and all of this. And I remember, and I'm very blessed and fortunate and grateful to have grown up in a using the word spiritual again, family where my mother was heavily into metaphysics. She had a bookstore when I was maybe in last part of primary school called Metaphysical Books, and I would go and read Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra, all these things after school around that age. And also she invited us into a meditation practice from quite young. So when I felt those like where do I belong questions and who am I questions, the existential parts as well, and then the who are my tribe questions, I often went to meditation. So
Yes.
what's interesting is that you're saying pretty much that internal looking, internal work, questioning, external expression. It's almost like the outside is just a litmus test of what you've understood about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's quite a really, I like the way you framed it because it makes sense to me at a deep level. So that's really beautiful. I thank you for that.
That's beautiful just to kind of dive into these places. This is
Yes.
really what ignites me. And
Mm,
I think on a a personal level, I do see my outside world as a reflection of my inner
Yeah.
space, my
Yes.
inner interiority. If I am being challenged from the outside in ways that initially I might kind of complain, or I might project, or I might
Mhm.
blame, it's like a time for reflection. It's a
Yeah.
time to come back home and just check, hey, what am I missing? What am I not fully addressing and nourishing inside my being right now?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I practice what I preach, and therefore my inner space is telling me something. It's
Yes.
asking for me to listen. And
Mhm.
and because I want to be the protagonist of my own movie, and I don't want to be on or in a production that I am not fully accountable for, I
Mhm.
need to stop for a moment and just pull back and check, hey, there's an inner space here that needs some holding,
Mhm.
needs to be really taken care of, because
Mhm.
the outside world is reflecting something.
Yes.
And that is a big part of what I teach and what I and how I work with people. And it's a complex dance sometimes,
Yeah.
because bad things happen in this life, and bad things happen to us.
Mhm.
Bad, when I say bad, like people encroach on our space in ways that can be abusive.
Yes.
If we keep pointing the finger, knowing that that is bad behavior, I watch how that is a seductive energy, and then we get pulled in to the movie of badness, the movie of abuse, the movie of all these kind of keywords that are flying around, the movie of narcissism, the movie of trauma.
Mhm.
My feeling is that life repeats itself in a fabulous way as an incredible teacher.
Yeah.
Something I haven't fully learned yet is appearing in the form of something that hurts me, something that makes me angry,
Mhm.
something that is bringing fear up in me. So
Mhm.
this is an opportunity. Is that easy? No.
Yeah. No.
Is is it easier just to say, hey, you know what? I'll just go and buy a pair of shoes? Which of course I also do.
Yes.
But the actual opportunity is like, if you miss it, I watch this and I think that's the pleasure that I have, a privilege to do what I love to do in life and work with people individually, couples, groups. It's such a beautiful teacher all the time.
Yeah.
I get the privilege of working with some people for 20 years, and you can see the patterns replaying themselves. And
Mhm.
here they are again, and here they are again. And so I call them AFGOs, which is another, you might have to beep F in, growth opportunity. You know, here
I
it is again.
That's so beautiful. It is for a lot of people, it is hard to hear. And I teach this too, so I know that piece well. You are responsible. You're not responsible for someone else's behavior. You're responsible for your response, reaction, and invitation of it. And so this for me is, again, how do we take full responsibility for that reflection that's going on the outer world with what's going on? And like you, I go straight in. I mean, my mom taught me this. I teach my kids this. Anytime they feel something and it touches you, I'm like, well, what is it within you that is touching? Because, if it was a scar and it was healed, you wouldn't feel it. So there's obviously still something there. There's still a wound. There's still some hurt, and you need to address that.
Yes.
It's the reason you can say, I have three kids, but when my boys, when they were young, like 6 and 8, I would say the exact same thing to them at the same time in the same room. And one would go off like, okay, and the other one would cry. It's like, what's the difference in that, right? One has a different response to it. And so we take responsibility, or we must learn to take responsibility for ourselves and all that encompasses.
And that is quite an ask, isn't it? Because
Yes.
what I also recognize in myself and in everyone that I have a privilege to work with is that some of it is conscious.
Yeah.
And some of it is really deep-rooted, unconscious, and inherited, transgenerational,
Mm.
enmeshed, entangled. It is a complex tapestry. It's a
Yes.
web of real, incredible, systemic at times influences. And
Mm.
so someone will say to me, but I've done so much work on myself. And that's the life. This is a life
Keep
journey.
going.
You know, this is going to, if it keeps showing and you're not happy with that, then you have got to recognize that there is something else that is
Mm.
wanting to be felt, seen, expressed, embraced. And
Yeah.
that unconscious piece is worked within, of course, different ways in your dreams, in your images, in symbols, in projections, in the shadow work. And
Yes.
that's where, for me, the shadow work has to be a big part of the
Yes.
journey.
Brilliant. Well, that's a beautiful segment because, or segue, because that's where I want to ask you, talk to me about the shadow work. First of all, in, let's say someone listening and they're like, well, what does she even mean by shadow work? Or what's the shadow? What does that mean? Can you talk a bit to that first?
So the way I see the shadow, it is the parts of us that we would rather not admit come through us. They're the parts that we would want to avoid, deny, absolutely will swear blind that are not part of us, are not how we
Mm.
think or how we feel. And we push them down, we suppress them, and we get so sophisticated in denying and cutting off those parts. I mean, it makes me laugh. That's the beauty of this work because it makes you absolutely hysterical. It's
Mm.
like, I never get angry. That's impossible.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
that at all possible? First and foremost, such a huge advocate of anger,
Mm.
not anger that is distorted and is leaking all over the place and passive aggressive and destructive and violent, but anger that is your human right. It
Mhm.
is the way that we have a boundary. It's the way
Yes.
that we say, this is me, and no, it's not okay.
Yes.
I often say, if you don't have a strong no, then your yes means nothing.
Mm.
So we play with these aspects of really recognizing deep inside we have, because we're infinite. You know, the parts that we know of ourselves, we've polished and we've shined and we've made them as perfect as we need them to be. And that can be in the light or in the dark, right?
Yes.
You might have perfected your rebel. You might have perfected your real innocent kind of a little expression lady or whatever it is. And then in that, there's the underbelly. There
Yeah.
is the dark part. You know, there's the passionate part, and then there's a rageful part. You
Mm.
know, there's the innocent part, and there's the part where we are super naive and like maybe we go into a victim. It's like playing with all of the aspects where there's a healthy aspect and there's an unhealthy aspect
Mhm.
of the different elements of how we express ourselves. For me, in that you can find the shadow as those parts that we really have not yet confessed or admitted to ourselves. And
Mhm.
they play out in really sneaky ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, and yes. Boy, do they, right?
Right.
And would you say one of the first steps in that not necessarily, let's not go as far as embrace your shadow yet, because that there's a process.
That's a
But
little bit premature, right?
yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, just embrace your shadow.
Yes,
But
right.
that first step, is that a self-witnessing, noticing, and then being able to express it in some way? Like, talk me through some of the steps from that perspective.
I think the first step is always recognizing that we are living a life that is not fulfilling. There are blockages. There's something that feels stuck. There's an irritation. There's repetition. Here I am again. And that offers an opportunity to stop for a moment and begin an inquiry. It's like, here I am again. I'm choosing the same partners that are really not good for me. Here I am again. I'm in a job that really I find so dull. And I've reached the top of my ladder and I'm a super successful, whatever it might be, CEO, director, whatever it might be. And I'm miserable.
Mm.
Or I'm in a marriage forever and I really feel no spark. And it's like, let's not just disrupt the apple cart like that and chuck everything outside, which sometimes can happen in crisis times. But really, before we get to that point, recognize I am in a mundane situation. It's painful. It's hurting me. It's making me angry. It's making me irritable. I come home and I want to kick the dog or I want to scream at my partner, or it's just, on the outside I look fabulous, but inside I'm really not happy. First step, alarm bells. There's the light, it's on. And
Mm.
there are different ways. That just is really calling for space. You need some time to reflect, whether that's through writing, whether that is through therapy, whether that is through a group or a workshop or reading or whatever it is, walking. Initially, you are finding perhaps on your own.
Yeah.
Many people say we're social animals, so you need another person. And to a certain extent, that's true. And then there's the introvert. And the introvert actually can go in and can find certain deep aspects that are troubling.
Yes.
And then once you've gone to that place and you're confessing with yourself or with another, you have that first step on the ladder. I am recognizing that I am really rageful. I leave the house and I bomb along the street and I'm just like looking for trouble.
Yeah.
And I recognize it. I'm tense, I'm rigid, I'm really just too sharp and prickly. Okay,
Yes.
something's happening. And in that point, something's hurting inside, something is in pain. And that can be a real incredible door opener. And I'm a big fan of looking at what it is that we were infused with. We absorbed so much in our childhood, and that can be in our childhood environment. It can be what we've inherited. I feel when our parents haven't been privileged to do the work that they would have needed to do on their own overwhelmed traumas, suffering, it is passed on. And we inherit it. It's just like that. And as kids, the first thing we want to do is rescue our parents. We want to make them happy. We want to take away their pain. And in that magical, innocent, childlike way, we absorb it and we make ourselves bigger than we are. And sometimes we lose our childhood in becoming the parent. And this parentification, and we are stepping into roles that are too big for us, for example.
Yes.
And that means there's an arrested development, there's an emotional arrested development. And we need to have space to go back and rescue that part, but not in some kind of, rescuing there's something terribly wrong. No, to meet that part, to reclaim, to reconnect, to really acknowledge that something wasn't fulfilled, something didn't get to transpire into a developmental space that it needed.
Yeah.
And so in recognizing that, we get to see that, hey, I need to start giving that attention to myself. I need that acknowledgement because it wasn't validated in me. And when we have those arrested spaces, and that's just one kind of simple example, but I think we all have times where we weren't fully appreciated and acknowledged because our parents are not superhuman.
Yeah.
They're
exactly.
dealing with their own stuff, and then society comes in, and then we're supposed to make ourselves a fantastic figure that is
Mm-hmm.
conditioned and programmed to live in a movie or a production.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I see it as this theater production where you get your roles and now you perform.
Learn your lines.
Learn your lines, and if you step out of your lines, God help you, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I want to speak to the emotion of that because here's what's interesting. And for me personally, I have a deep practice with sound and voice, looking inward. I work with clients. I help facilitate in my own way this and so on and so forth. But here's what came up interestingly for me recently, and this is personal to me. So, and I'm also saying this so that those listening who think, well, yeah, it's easy for some. No, it's not. Everybody has their own challenges and ways in and out of this. But I was speaking to someone and they were asking me something about, I guess, inner child work, let's call it. And it took me quite a long time to come away from, and it's not always like this, but this time it was really noticeable to come away from intellectualizing it.
Mm.
Oh, I've got that part of me. Oh no, I'll support that part of me. Or oh no, this is how she feels. She didn't always feel prioritized or so on. And she was great because she kept nudging me towards the feeling. Yeah, but how does she feel? Not just like, oh well, we've got this. Let's go, young child. And so that was a really beautiful witnessing in myself of, oh, I'm really good at analyzing and intellectualizing the emotion sometimes, but it's in that raw expression and the feeling. You said the pain, the hurt, the sadness, the whatever that needs to be looked at. So can you speak a little bit about that intellectualizing versus really going into the body and into the feeling to address what's going on deep down?
Yes, I can. I think the intellectualizing that ego space gets a hard rap. I
Mm.
think for many people and for most of us, we live in our heads.
Yes.
And the journey is to bring those thoughts into the body, into feeling.
Mhm.
And for me, the body and the physiology is really how I understand life. It's how I work with people. Energetically, you can sense someone, you can feel them. You
Yeah.
feel a rigidity, you feel a fluidity. You
Mhm.
understand, you know when there's a hold in, when the breath has
Yes.
stopped, when there's a
Yes.
little bit of shock or terror. And
Mhm.
this I find fascinating because we all speak, let's say we're speaking English right now, we speak this language and we think it's a universal language. Like when I say anger, I'm assuming you understand anger like how I understand anger.
Mhm.
It's not like that. It's
No.
not like that. Many people understand anger in a way that it's a no-go area. It's terrible. It's such
Mhm.
a real kind of horrendous experience to have, especially if you've come from a background that is really violent and aggressive.
Yes.
But that's not anger for me, or if we look at it in its purest sense. And so the word anger is one thing, but then I love to find that in your body. So
Mm.
meditation for me is a big one. And I love Osho's meditations because he does active meditations.
Mm.
A specific one which really speaks to me, which is dynamic meditation. And in that meditation, you get to go through phases so that your nervous system is ignited, so that the neurological pathways have an expression. So the physiological sense of your being is
Mm.
open and welcomed. And you
Mhm.
get to recognize, and sometimes if you've been super heady because emotions were not done, which is often a big part of the English culture, we are, we do tasks and we are structured and we get goals and we
Mhm.
find, but we forget that, oh, inside I'm feeling sad. I feel
Yeah.
shame. I feel hurt.
Yes, exactly.
And so, really allowing yourself to find music that really allows you to get in touch and make a connection with anger, with shame, with sadness. We're so privileged with the music array that's out there.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to have these feelings and
Mhm.
to really go into the vulnerability of feelings. And I think that's the key piece.
Yes.
vulnerability has really been stamped as a terrible, weak aspect. That if you go into vulnerability, you're going to get taken advantage of, you will be
Mm-hmm.
hurt, protect yourself. And we know when we are feeling really upset inside that often the first thing we go to is protection. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we pull back those tears, and there's a frozen stance that
Mm-hmm.
kind of pulls our spine erect, and we're like, I'm all right. And we're like holding back the tears.
The words are there, but the rest doesn't follow.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is, I find that beautiful because what an opportunity to
Yeah.
allow the body just in that moment, just one moment. Hey, actually, I am really experiencing the tightness of my body. Something
Mm-hmm.
is holding me in a place to perhaps protect me, and from what? So if
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity comes and you're in a situation where at that moment it's probably not so convenient to collapse and go into a ball, then we can contain it, we curb it, just say to ourselves, hey, I'm going to revisit that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
You come home, you put your music on, you write, you open your journal, whatever speaks to you, and you say, hey, I'm going back to that moment. I
Mm-hmm.
touched something, and I want to feel the felt sense of that. I
Yes.
want to understand the sensations. The body has another language. I
Yes.
want to recognize whether there's a vibration or there's a pulsation, there's a tingling. Is it subtle? Is it intense? Can
Mm-hmm.
start to find the language of your own body. And
Yeah.
that's baby steps.
Yes.
But we all have that moment where our eyes do a little flicker because we're
Mm-hmm.
just pushing something away, or
Yeah. Yeah.
we lose our voice and we
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
big breath, right? Or our
Mm-hmm.
legs tremble, we have a little bit, and it's like, give yourself a moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do for myself. Give myself that moment to rage it out, to cry it out, to stamp it out, to feel because the nervous system knows.
Yes.
Has
Yes.
a sympathetic response where it's activated, or it has a push down where it's
Mm-hmm.
just shutting things down, a parasympathetic way of saying, no, I'm not going there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shut it off,
Yeah.
and then many of us develop what we might call that window of tolerance where we function in everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was saying Stepford Wives situation. Hey,
Ugh.
oh, exactly. See, your whole body does it.
Oh, I'm like, no. Yeah. Yes, and I love, and this is going to lead me to the next question for you, but that quote that comes up for me, and I don't know who says it. My mother used to say it too, is that we're always one breath away from a new reality. And that, give yourself a moment. And I know that you bring breath work into your work. So I want to talk about the breath because I witnessed so much magic and transformation when we worked together, where people just breathed into their bodies when you were taking them through the process of facing those parts of themselves that dare not share this, but okay, I'm invited to share this, and it's supported and celebrated, and now I can move with it, and now I want to know about the breath.
Oh, beautiful. In this day and age, there's so many breath courses, trainings, kind of offerings out there. I did breath work training, I think in 2008, something like, and it was Osho's pulsation training, and that is conscious connected breath. Since then, I have done many other trainings, and maybe I'm a bit controversial
Mm,
because I don't have that real, you have to be in this structure, you have to be like this, you have to like control it in certain ways. And I've watched that be expressed, and each to their own for sure. But my particular body type has an energy.
mhm.
People I've worked with, their bodies, I trust the body. And the
Yes.
body is robust. The body has been through such a lot. Even for the most traumatized person, guess what? They survived.
Hmm.
And that part, sometimes I think as breath practitioners, we forget. The body has an intelligence and a wisdom, and it will take you where it needs to go. And of course, people talk about re-traumatization. That can happen if we're just like flipping and we're somewhere else and we don't actually know how to create a safe container and allow the co-regulation, which teaches the regulation, which actually is an instinct which can be triggered and is there and is available. And so the way I work with the breath is really to go on a journey. We go on a journey, and the person who's breathing is always in control, always. And at any point, if they feel they're going to an intense place, and sometimes, yes, that can take you, and we'll always have workers around and facilitators. But trust the body. If you go to a place of, let's say, you get a shock or you're in panic, at that moment, the body is asking for something to be revealed to open up. And so when I'm journeying with the breath, it's very much about recognizing the felt sense and pulsation of the inner interiority. And trust in the body. And I think setting a solid container where people feel already trust in the container, it allows people to start trusting themselves.
Yes.
And so I do one-on-one, but also in a group. And it's a journey where at the beginning I'm teaching people how, if it feels intense, how they bring it back. That this isn't someone doing it to you.
Yes, again, the responsibility piece, yes.
Right, it's a responsibility. Everything is inbuilt. And so we start breathing in and out from the nose, for example, which gives the person a recognition of their own breathing and their rhythm. Sometimes we're going faster. Then we change in and out from the mouth, conscious and connected. There's no gaps in between. And the person gets to really feel their own activation.
Yes.
And this is influenced by Reiki and Alexander Lowen, and there's a lot of teachers that have put their beautiful, intense work into the whole breath studies. And I pull from different parts and bring in the psychology as well as the whole kind of Jungian aspect and the nervous system and the polyvagus. There's a bit
Whole, like you said, a cauldron. I love that word of all the stuff in there.
Cauldron of everything. And I think that's, I pull here, this part, and the body types, and different bodies breathe in different ways. And that's fascinating. And then if at any point in that activation, the person is kind of getting to a place of overwhelm, I always feel there's an edge. And sometimes if I look at that, it's like kind of, you could pull someone back and put them back into the production, where they feel safe. Or you can be tantalizing and you can stay on the edge a little bit, because sometimes you slip through and then you're in something so new, so beautiful, so unknown. But with safety, you are there, you have a consciousness, you've cultivated something that will allow you to really touch into the beauty of trusting yourself in the unknown and be held by something bigger than you. And that's the part I love to play. I don't want to stop that.
No.
And so if there's a possibility to move into your own individuality in that space, and I watch it over and over again, it's amazing, because that person will walk away with, I did that. That was mine. I can go there. It's something that I can return to.
You are responsible for your own healing. And as you said, the body and us as energetic beings have an innate wisdom that just does the work. It does it if we allow ourselves to get to that place, that it just does it all on its own. And what I love, and again, I relate to this, I work a lot intuitively like you do, Abigail. And what I love is, when I think about everything you mentioned in your story, the netball, the dance, the wear, the hair, all these different things, it really felt, and you do say in your introduction about integrative, right? You're bringing all of you together. Right. And why not bring all of you everywhere?
Right.
And with that, for me, it's then you can't be in the box. So when I work with people and I teach sound healing and I teach these practices, I talk about, from a music perspective, what you're doing is you're learning the scales so you can improvise. The scales is the science, you studied, you read, you did your degree, your master's, you got all the structure, and now you can play freely with everything that you've learned and brought in to this space, because that's how we serve people best, in my humble opinion. If we show up whole, we invite them into wholeness for themselves.
Absolutely. And become excited about that expanding wholeness and
Yes.
the sensuality of that wholeness and the femininity of that and the masculinity and how those
Mm.
energies play together and how
Yes.
they're lustful and how actually they can be really fearful and they can carry sadness, but they can also be exciting and playful and mischievous. And it's like that whole shabam. It's the cauldron again. It's
Yeah.
like, a life unexplored is the life unlived kind of thing. And for
Mm.
me, it's like a taste of the light and the real playful and joyful aspects, as well as the sadness and that lamenting pace, which actually brings such a richness.
Mm.
And I think sometimes I watch that idea that comes from society that this is right and this is wrong, and this is
Yeah.
good and this is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I get there's healthy and there's unhealthy. I get it.
Mhm.
And can we play?
Mhm.
Can we just have a little piece? I always say, try everything once, except
Mhm.
arsenic. And I'm sure there's a few other things, but it's like, Can we be naughty and provocative,
Mhm.
and just push
Yes.
that boundary a little bit? And can we be light and playful and surrender and actually be vulnerable? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That's one of my biggest lessons, Simone. I have to
Yeah.
say, to recognize that I was incredibly powerful energetically. I could
Mm.
stand I'm tall, I could stand in it and I could say, "Fuck, no,
Yeah.
no."
Yes.
And at the same time, I could feel into my heart, my own sensitivity, and be touched and
Yes.
have tears and have vulnerability for suffering and for the animals that actually are hurt and are
Mm.
left alone in a field, and it's like, wow, it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
Actually, there is an amalgamation of that power and sensitivity, and that creates my individual expression. And long may it live, because
Yes.
it's infinite. What
Yes.
more? How much more expansion is possible? And that
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
is forever going on.
Yes, that's beautiful. And it's unlimited. We put the limitations, don't we? But I want to talk to that naughty and provocative piece, because I definitely am a naughty creature. I hands up, I celebrate that, but it wasn't always expressed, it was, and we a lot as children get that stamped out, what's naughty, what's nice. I mean, we have that in flipping Christmas carols. And if you're not careful, Santa's not going to bring you a present. You have to be nice. I mean, even come on,
Yeah.
conditioning, right? It
Yeah.
stamps out that naughty, and I love that in myself, and I'm embracing that in myself now. So a little bit of a suggestion or a piece of advice for people listening who go, yeah, I'm naughty, but I can't dare let someone see that. What's something that they could think or do, or something that you think you're called to share about being able to embrace that? It's not necessarily shadow, but we can call it that still. Some
Yeah.
people, I guess, would see that as shadow. If they're naughty, it's the bad part. But yeah, speak a bit to that piece.
Let me speak to that piece. I would say find some rules that are just ridiculous to you. Just
Mm.
find some rules where you just don't get the logic. It just doesn't work for you. It doesn't make sense. I had a fabulous she's a powerful lawyer, and she has to wear the powerful suit. And underneath she decided to wear this bright pink bra. just was poking through a little bit, just to say, hey, I'm super powerful and I'm
Yes.
provocative here.
Yes.
It's like not the dumb thing. I love to
Mhm.
wear like, you're supposed to look smart and you've got a sparkly pair of shoes on. Or
Mhm.
you're smart, you've got some leopard skin somewhere. Something
Yes.
like you just know.
Yes.
It's like it's not supposed to be fitting. So I would say break some rules, not rules that are gonna put you behind bars,
Of course. Yes.
not rules that are gonna hurt people.
Yes.
Just someone says you can't say that or you can't do that, you can't
Mhm.
behave in such a way, break the rules.
Yeah.
That's
That's so practical. I love that because I really love to offer my listeners practical things that they can go, let
yeah,
me try that. I think that's such a beautiful one.
yeah,
So beautiful.
and you can just get really creative and spontaneous with that. And
Mm.
I love to just keep it open. It's not
Yes.
putting my ideas on people, but just what are those rules that just make you cringe or
Yeah.
just think that's ludicrous? It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Who says it's supposed to be like that?
Well,
Yeah.
who says? I mean, I was driving the other day and there was a diversion, a big sign, divert, and there was no one there. And there's nothing wrong with the road. It's just laziness. They hadn't taken the diversion sign away. And I'm supposed to go around, and it's going to take me half an hour more because I'd done it the other day. I was like, I'm going through. And there's all the lights there, and of course I'm looking, is there any danger? Any cars coming from any side roads? And I went through, and instead I was in my location where I needed to be in like 5 minutes. I
Mm.
broke the rules. And I was thinking, maybe there's a camera. If there's a camera, I am going to debate it.
Mhm.
I'm going to stand up for it. And that's another thing. I mean, how many supermarkets say you've got to park here? Only 2 hours. But your
Mhm.
shopping took a little bit longer than 2 hours. And then
Yeah.
you get some parking ticket. It doesn't even come from a real source.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
get threatened. Now, I don't want to break rules that are actually, in place
I
for
understand.
sensible reasons, but there
Mhm.
are some ludicrous laws out there.
Yeah.
So break the rules.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. That's the rebel in me doing some backflips and cheering
Right?
that on for people to go, I saw this t-shirt the other day, like they have memes and it really spoke to me because there was always this part of me, not always, but for a while, this part of me that was hidden away. And the t-shirt says, I am the granddaughter of the witches they could not burn. And I was like, I have
Wow.
to buy that shirt. I have to buy that shirt. Now, I don't go around calling myself a witch, but it embodies
Yeah.
that magic, that in beautiful empowerment that exists. And I believe it exists in all of us in different ways that I felt like, oh, I have to kind of not show all of that to everyone because, might be a bit too much or too scary or they won't understand. And I was just like, that doesn't matter. It's not about if whether they understand or not. And being
That
able to
is something.
celebrate that and then celebrate it in other people. This is what this whole podcast is about. I'm celebrating
I
you.
love that. And the modern day witch might be the Kali. It might
Yeah.
be that one of that energy that you stand in that just
Mhm.
says, I will not step out of my truth.
Yeah.
Anything frivolous. I
Yes.
won't people please. I won't do it you
Mm.
tell me because it makes you feel better.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
know there's compromises, but sometimes we overrun ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think in women, we are often kind of subject to give and give and give and overrun ourselves.
Yeah.
So breaking the rules there, I'm talking about certain rules of loyalties. Loyalties
Mm.
like I will be punished if I don't do a good deed for this person because I'm efficient and capable and I can.
Mm.
Break the rules and tolerate the guilt that you're going to feel. because you will feel it. When we're changing and we're navigating our route in a different direction from the one that is well trodden and the one that is familiar, and just learning to start speaking our truth and acting in accordance to our truth, what can often happen is we end up feeling so guilty. And I say, when you start feeling guilty, just know that that is you starting to nurture yourself. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about silly acts where you've purposely hurt someone.
Of
If
course.
you put yourself first and
Mm.
you feel guilty, it means you've taken yourself out of a place of harmonizing. And
Yeah.
often we're so used to
Yes.
placating. Let me just make this better. It's easier. It's
Hmm.
easier in the short term, but in the long term, that accumulation builds up in us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that part then wants to explode. And so
Yeah.
I say, give yourself short bursts
Hmm.
of redirecting, re-navigating, and just exercise and know.
Yes. That's.
Actually, right now, that's not going to work for me. And
Hmm.
inside, you're going to feel, oh my God, I've disappointed someone, I've let someone down. But the most difficult thing is that you wanted to avoid that because you knew it was going to make you feel the way that it's making you feel.
Exactly. Yes.
So
Yes.
now we practice feeling those
The
discomfort,
discomfort.
those awkward places inside. And that is another way of opening the shadow space, right?
Yes, yes, that's so beautiful. My old play, the production I was in was being afraid of confrontation. And when I realized that, and I worked with it, and I had many opportunities to work with that, and I stood in my power, everything changed.
Right.
All of a sudden I was seen as someone else in certain contexts. It was like, who are you? I'm like, that's a good thing then. That's
Right.
a good thing because that's my affirmation of, even though it wasn't comfortable, like you said, that's my affirmation of I'm moving in the right direction and
Isn't
I'm
that
standing in my worth. Yeah, beautiful.
And that we're not taught. We're
Yeah.
not taught that when we feel these awkward discomforts,
Mm.
that actually could be a sign that we're on a path of individuation where we are realizing something that is true for us.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, that's not a teaching. That's again, we are in that production where we have a particular role, and if we play that particular role, then we get a gold star.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's you're always hungry. It's never satisfying. You
Mm.
know, it's never satisfying because it's not speaking to that essential piece,
Mhm.
that deep core part of our true nature where we get to start to find out who we really are. I think that might be a little bit of a disease of our current lifestyle,
Yeah.
the current day and age, which is we don't know who we are.
Mhm.
We've been conditioned and programmed to be a particular way. We don't know who we are. And
Mm.
that again brings me back to my fascination with what is our potential
Yes.
before AI come and take over. What is the human potential? And it's coming in on one level that excites me.
Of
But
course, yes.
really, will we miss the opportunity? Maybe of that deep potential of what really is possible when we come out of the programmed
Yeah.
stance of what we've
Yes.
been told and conditioned to believe we are.
Yes. Oh, my heart is like going, it's like a massive pump of yummy, yummy. This is great. More food, more dessert.
Exactly. That's the
And
way to live. I love that. It's the sparks, the heart.
yeah,
It's a heartfelt place, an
that's it.
intuitive place.
That's it. That's it. Oh, I'm sure it's bouncing off this Zoom call. And for those listening, there's so many nuggets here. I hope you run with them. And I always invite people to ask questions and leave comments and keep the conversation going. Abigail, I'm so grateful for your time, for your love, your presence, your awesomeness, your beauty, everything that you bring to the table. And, really all the work that you're doing to help people to heal, to transform, and to thrive in all the different facets of their life. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's so gorgeous to hear. And I have to also thank you because I also witnessed your work and that beautiful love of expression and sound and voice. It's really quite something. So I really relish our journey and our connection together because that was very beautiful.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I didn't tell, or maybe I did. I always wanted to be Beyonce. So I also feel like
We did do a little Beyonce, didn't we?
we did. We did a little bit of
We
the
did, we
movement,
did.
the body, and the dance and the voice.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have one final question for you before we wrap up, Abigail, and that is, what is your soulful sound to the world? That's a self-prayer or desire that you wish upon the world.
You know what? I think the desire has to be that inner work is a lifestyle. And
Yeah.
it's such a blessing to give that to ourselves. It's something I say often. It really is a lifestyle. The love of the truth. Find what really matters to you. What's your deepest longing? And never give up. Go for it. And really find that individual expression that wants to come through you because you're as unique as your fingerprint and
Mhm.
the world needs you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Simone.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Your support, your comments, and everything is truly incredible, and we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. If you love this episode, hit that like and subscribe button and make sure to check out our other episodes. Thanks so much for being with us today, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.